It is the 22nd of June, and our reading from this day in Baptist history is Men of Vision. And our text is Lamentations chapter 3, verse 27. It is good for a man that he bear the yoke in his youth. The modern day missionary movement is a tribute to our British Baptist forebears who on October 2nd, 1792, organized what became known as the Baptist Missionary Society. Prior to that time, the Baptists of Britain had embraced a style hyper-Calvinism, and a desire for evangelism was non-existent. The gospel was never preached to sinners for fears that some non-elect person might respond. The Spirit of God was moving in hearts, however, and in 1752, a particular Baptist pastor in Yorkshire, Alvery Jackson, published a book refuting Calvinism. Abraham Booth, another famed particular Baptist preacher, published The Reign of Grace in 1768. In the volume, Mr. Booth denounced limited atonement, and the book made an impact. The Reverend Andrew Fuller had been reared in that hyper-Calvinistic atmosphere, but in time he too rejected the doctrinal straitjacket that had stifled the work of God. In 1785 he wrote The Gospel Worthy of All Acceptation, in which, while maintaining a moderate Calvinism, Fuller urged evangelism and missions. To be sure, others had been struggling with a missionary effort. One cannot forget the work of the Moravians, and particularly of Count Nicholas Ludwig van Zinzendorf. The Moravians considered no cost too great in their effort to carry the gospel. In 1732 they founded a mission in the West Indies. In 1733 they entered Greenland. 1734 found them working among the American Indians. In 1736 they took the gospel to South Africa. Thank God as well for David Brainerd and his evangelistic labors in New Jersey and eastern New York from 1744 to 1747. Surely one must mention the Moravian David Zeinsberger, who without stint devoted himself from 1746 to 1808 toward reaching the Delaware Indians in New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Canada. But for at least 60 years, no organized missionary agency envisioned preaching Christ around the world. It remained for 5 youthful Baptist preachers to organize a missionary agency to send the gospel in a methodical effort around the world. The history of these men is amazing, for they were not pastors of large churches that could afford a gigantic missionary budget, nor were they well-known scholars who could demand a hearing. Yet as they surrendered to God, the Lord used them individually and collectively to begin an effort that has never died. The work actually had its beginning in 1784 when the Reverend John Sutcliffe of Olney suggested, and the Reverend John Weiland Jr. of Northampton drew up a resolution which was unanimously passed, recommending the churches to observe 1 hour of the first Monday evening of every month in prayer for a revival of the churches and of the general cause of the Redeemer. In the exhortation that was subjoined to the resolution, they say, and I quote, "Let the spread of the gospel to the most distant parts of the habitable globe be the object of your fervent requests." End of quote. All 5 of the young men were outstanding, but of John Sutcliffe it has been said, and I quote, "No man except Fuller rendered it, the Mission Society, nobler service until his death, June 22nd, 1814. Fuller, Ryland, Sutcliffe, and Pierce were the chief friends of foreign missions in England at a time when they were regarded with incredulous contempt." End of quote. One author has opined, and I quote, "The faith of the 5, Carey, Fuller, Pierce, Ryland, and Sutcliffe, in hazarding a missionary society with only so few, humble and feeble a backing was new in modern British history. The leaders were all comparatively young. Ryland, 39, Sutcliffe, 40, Fuller, 38, Carey, 31, and Pierce, 26. Young men caught the vision. Young men took the plunge." End of quote. Surely time bears all its sons away. God buries his workmen, but his work continues on. And I quote, "Andrew Fuller entered into rest on the 7th of May, 1815, at the age of 62. Sutcliffe of Olney had been the first of the 3 to be taken away a year before at the same age. The scholarly Dr. Ryland of Bristol was left alone, and the whole management of the mission passed into the hands of another generation. End of quote. William Carey labored on to June 9, 1834, but the vision of those young men has never died. To God be the glory.